Formula One's biggest stars have just gone to war with the sport's own rulebook, and the governing body is scrambling to respond before a single competitive lap has been run. Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, and Fernando Alonso, between them, 13 world championships have lined up and fired at the 2026 regulations in the most public and damaging way possible. And the FIA, for all its careful messaging, knows it has a serious problem on its hands. Let's start with the man who lit the fuse. Verstappen didn't pull any punches after the first Bahrain test, calling the new cars Formula E on steroids, labeling them anti-racing, and saying flat out that the driving experience is just not Formula One. His frustration boils down to one thing: energy management. Under the new 2026 rules, the power unit is split almost 50-50 between the internal combustion engine and electrical power, meaning drivers must constantly harvest energy by lifting and coasting, downshifting aggressively, and managing their battery charge throughout the lap just to stay competitive. Corners that were flat out in previous years, like turns 12 and 13 inches Bahrain, are now being taken up to 60 km/h slower, not because the cars lack grip, but purely to save energy for the next straight. Verstappen described the sensation as being energy poor, explaining that there's a lot going on. A lot of what you do as a driver in terms of inputs has a massive effect on the energy side of things, and for me that's just not F1. Because then maybe it's better to drive Formula E, right? Because that's all about energy efficiency and management, and that's what they stand for. So driving-wise, not so fun. He then twisted the knife further by suggesting publicly that the drivers who actually support the new regulations could all fit in a small, easy-up tent, while those with objections need a much, much larger one. And Fernando Alonso, a man who has raced in more different F1 rule eras than anyone else on the grid, delivered perhaps the most cutting assessment of all. The two-time champion said plainly that driver skill matters less under the new regulations, and then told media that through certain corners, the energy management demands make the cars so controlled that Aston Martin's chef could drive through them without any issue. He didn't stop there. "I think all the regulations have their own special things," he said, "but I think this one is a little bit more dramatic on that regard. Some of the energy management and some of the driving that you have to do in order to optimize the energy around the lap, and sometimes even in qualifying, is a bit annoying. From a driver point of view, you want to drive 100%? And I think now you need to think a little bit more than that." He also addressed the romantic idea that some analysts had floated that the new complexity would reward the smartest, most skillful drivers. Alonso crushed that theory, saying, "By Sunday, I think there are not many surprises and not many mistakes that the driver can do. You don't have much freedom in terms of what you can do in the cockpit, or how much energy you can use. It's very limited by the FIA. There is for sure more adrenaline with the older cars," he added, "and more sense of driving at the limit, not by efficiency or a robot style of driving that you need to maximize." Then there is Lewis Hamilton, who described sitting in a technical briefing about the 2026 cars and feeling completely overwhelmed. "I sat in a meeting the other day and they were taking us through it. It's like you need a degree to fully understand it all," he told the media, raising the genuinely serious concern that fans watching at home are going to struggle to follow what is happening on track. And he wasn't wrong to raise it. Formula One's broadcasters have since confirmed they sat through lengthy technical presentations about the new regulations that left even the most experienced paddock journalists baffled. New phrases like superclipping, a bizarre phenomenon where a driver has the throttle fully planted to the floor, but the car actually slows down because the energy recovery system essentially overrides the engine, are already becoming part of the F1 vocabulary. Superclipping, straight mode, corner mode, overtake mode. These are the terms fans are now going to need to understand just to follow a race. Hamilton did soften slightly during the second test, saying he was in the best place I've been in a long time with Ferrari, but his fundamental concern about the regulation's complexity has not gone away. Charles Leclerc, the fastest driver across the entire 2 weeks of testing, raised a concern that could genuinely define the quality of the 2026 season overtaking. He flagged openly how difficult it is going to be to pass under these new rules, and during testing there was already a moment that illustrated exactly why. Footage emerged of a driver attempting an overtake mid-maneuver and simply running out of deployable electrical energy, the car losing power at the critical moment, and the move dying right there on the road. Multiple drivers described passing as potentially near on impossible in certain circumstances, and Adrian Newey, now at Aston Martin, added his considerable technical authority to those concerns, expressing reservations about just how much genuine wheel-to-wheel action fans will see this year. Even the drivers who tried to stay positive couldn't quite hold the line. Reigning world champion Lando Norris defended the cars publicly during the first test, but then walked that back during the second week, admitting that it is not the purest form of racing and that the new formula feels more like F2 machinery in terms of the overall sensation. He tried to frame it diplomatically, saying, "F1 changes all the time. Sometimes it's a bit better to drive, sometimes not as good. We get paid a stupid amount of money to drive, so you can't really complain, but the admission that this isn't pure F1 coming from the reigning champion is telling." George Russell was one of the genuinely positive voices, and Norris pointed out that whoever ends up winning won't be complaining, but that doesn't solve the structural problem the FIA now faces. So how did the FIA respond? Well, they held an emergency driver survey during the F1 Commission meeting on February 18th at the Bahrain circuit, an extraordinary step that speaks to just how loud the alarm bells were ringing. The feedback covered overall car characteristics, energy and power unit concerns, aerodynamics, overtaking, tires, and mechanical grip. The FIA acknowledged positive feedback on the cars being lighter and smaller, and said drivers agreed the new machinery had improved ride quality and stronger initial acceleration. But on energy management, the issue that caused all the drama, the governing body essentially kicked the can down the road, agreeing only that no immediate major regulatory changes were required, given that the data was still immature. FIA single-seater director Nicolas Tumbazis told the media directly, "The cars are new. In the period of last summer and last autumn, a lot of people were driving the simulators and expressing huge concerns, and we always said these concerns may or may not materialize." He signaled that the FIA is open to adjustments, particularly around how much energy drivers are allowed to recover and deploy per lap crucially. Changes that would require only software tweaks rather than hardware modifications. "There wouldn't be any need for any change of your system," Tombazis said. "It would be more how you run your system." But he also warned, "It's unlikely to be something between Australia and China. It's also not months and months." Translation: Melbourne is going ahead as is, and fans better buckle up. What do you think? Are the drivers right to speak out? Or is this all just growing pains that will sort themselves out? Should the FIA have done more testing before locking in these regulations? And will the 2026 season end up being a classic or a disaster? Drop your predictions in the comments, and if you enjoyed this breakdown, smash that like button and subscribe for more F1 news. I'll catch you in the next one.